back to the 20th of February, 1942, in the Wirraway versus Heclapar play-by campaign. We've skipped ahead another day or so. Right now, Heclapar is not fighting back in very many theaters. Oh, there's a submarine, it looks like, um, the Yellow Sea, but he's not fighting back in most theaters. So some of the turns are very quiet. All you'd be watching is my redeployment since we can't see what he's doing. Eventually, he's going to come um, fighting back, but that might still be months away. So we skipped ahead to this turn where we're going to try to catch his bombers, B-17s primarily, that have been trying to keep the pounding my advancing armor and recon unit in India um, after most of his medium bombers and fighters were damaged or destroyed a few days before at Madras. I also had a request to talk about pilot training, so I'll cover that in the end of turn. Looks like I misset my bombers. They're supposed to be going after the airfield. And the bulk of my aircraft were supposed to be hitting his isolated units at Tarapo. I want to disrupt them before attacking there. But yeah. So the lilies come in. Oh, Blenheim and Hudson's operating from Hyderabad go after my 3 infantry divisions for the first time. Weather's not light clouds. Weather's not great, so they don't have much success. That's the first time he's hit my infantry at all. Okay, Marauders get caught by zeros. At least one destroyed. Let's see what estimated at 5,000 feet. My zeros were at 5 and 6,000 feet. He'd been coming in lower. Oh, the B-17s, yeah. Good. Yeah, they were coming in at 2,000. So my zeros got the jump on them. The Oscars are flying high cover, uh, just in case he swept the hex. My zeros are out of ammunition, out of position. So it looks like we've probably got 4 or 5 B-17s. That's good. Of course, those are D models. with significantly less defensive firepower. But nevertheless, you want to destroy as many B-17s as you can, as the Japanese. So I have reports that an enemy ship is sitting in port at Munta. Recon picked it up. We'll see. Our Kates didn't find it. Attacks on Manila to suppress fort building and destroy supply. He hasn't contested this guy's. Sally's bombing his troops at Tarapo. Looks like I set them to attack the airfield instead of the troops. Waste of a day's missions, mostly. It's been bombing the airfield at Norfolk Island for the last few days with B-17s operating out of New Zealand. It doesn't affect anything I'm doing there. These are, I presume, one of the AKLs that was at Madras that trying to escape. Have any major operations going on this turn? Gotta speed through these. We're massing our 4th Tank Regiment. We'll talk about reinforcements on Luzon here in a moment. Let's see how close we are to finally eliminating these guys. Getting close. Yeah, he's out of supply here. That's good. As he should be. Oops. still showing pretty disproportionate losses to Allied artillery. No real changes there. Take a look. Aircraft losses today at 10 Allied losses. You can count for 5 B-17s, 2 Catalinas, and 1 Marauder. So there's 2 more Allied losses today. Remember, this number is never wrong. My guess is perhaps another Marauder, perhaps another B-17. Anyway, 10-to-1 loss ratio in the last week or so. It's about 30 enemy aircraft to 1 or 2 Japanese losses. And my losses actually was a Dyna. I've lost no combat aircraft in India in the last 2 or 3 weeks. That's good. Let's check on our redeployment here. The last of our units that we pulled out of the Aleutians. So redeploying Naval Guard units to secure Cold Bay, Unmak, Adak, and Amchitka. But just Special Naval Landing Force units pulled the elements of the 2 Korean divisions that I'm redeploying for the push on Manila. 20th Division and the 28th Division are nearly ready to be, still another couple weeks, but one of the regiments is here. And of those 2 divisions, another here. The artillery is still here, the divisional artillery. I don't have quite the PPs to buy out the artillery yet. That's there are about 350. So, it's 7 days worth of PPs. I'm close to buying out one. So I'm still more than a week from buying out both, but all the other units, divisional units, have been bought out and are either already on Luzon or ready to travel. We'll be ready to attack again here, either this turn or the next. Got a couple of our armor units that are not in great shape, but the preponderance of them are, and both 2 essentially fresh divisions are now ready. Typically, when I rebuild them, they don't quite have enough supply, so I'll wait one more day. We're just about ready to try Changsha in a major way. We've got 2 divisions at Wuchang 3 and another 5 plus Army artillery and the Army headquarters, all fully prepped for Changsha. The headquarters, you can see the Expeditionary Army is prepped. And the equivalent of the Allied Corps headquarters, Japanese Army, is prepped. So we'll push to Changsha. We're still maneuvering around Kukong to put pressure on these isolated units and destroy them or force them to retreat around Wuchao. Last of our armor regiments has been landed. So another couple of days before what should be the end of game attacks here at Bandowing. You're ready to take Tarapo and its oil. Our amphibious assault on Balikpapan and Samarinda is reorganized. For this coming turn, he's got a number of ships sitting in unprotected harbors around the map. So we're going to attack the unprotected ships because all of his fighters, those that are available in India and functional, are either at Hyderabad or Bombay. And we'll continue the advance on Madras. And we're ready to take Jamshedpur, advance on Howrah, and Asansol to set the conditions for the encirclement of Calcutta. We want Madras and Bangalore first, and we'll rail back over, mass our forces, and take Calcutta. Once we've done that, we'll go ahead and move on Magway. I've got enough anti-aircraft guns and fighters that I can protect the oil at Magway with basically only his only ability to fly in bombers to. He's got a level 3 airfield at Imphal. And Lido. I can watch that. He's also got one at Kunming. I should get recon on Kunming. Okay. Reinforcements continue to move into Viz. Now let's talk about pilot training. Oh, I'll do this. I'll do SOPAC. So we have our search aircraft operating out of Nouméa. Norfolk Island's more of a tripwire. When he takes Norfolk, then I know he's preparing his push. We have our theater reserve reassembled. We're building up Nauru Island and sending reinforcements to the Gilberts and the Marshalls. That's a priority over the next 2 to 3 weeks. You want to build up supporting airfields around Tapatouie, which is my main defensive position here. They're pretty well dug in already. Okay, now let's talk about pilot training. So the basic elements of my pilot training strategy for the IJN, the Navy. I use float planes to train in sweep. To 60 air. Then I switch the sweep. That's at 10,000 feet, range of 0. Then I switch the altitude to 100, train in strafing. As my goal is to get defense to 70 and air to about 70 and experience to 50. Once I get close in the float planes, I use about half my float planes to train IGN fighters. I put them in the reserve and pull them into actual fighter squadrons. This is an example. And you can see he's continuing to train in sweep, trying to get their defense higher. But that's the progression from float planes to an actual fighter squadron with the goal of 50 experience, 70 air, 70 defense. And that generally takes 2 to 2.5 months. First month training in sweep to get air up to about 60 and defense to about 50, then strafing. And then if I have to, I go to low naval with an altitude of 1,000. And again, trying to get that defense up to 70. I always sort. Once they get to 70 defense, I move them into reserve and reduce the size of the training pool so that pilots train faster. Uh, Fewer pilots, more rapidly they train. So no use once a pilot gets to your target skills, leaving them in the squadron. It just slows down the rate of development of the others. For the IJN bombers, let's see, sorry. I use the dive bombers to train at 10,000 range of 0 naval attack to get until their naval bombing, gets up to 70, and then move them to reserve. And meanwhile, the torpedo bombers train naval attack with torpedoes. And then I dump these to reserve and pull in the pilots I just trained in naval bombing. So my goal is all my naval bomber pilots are both 70 torpedo, 70 bombing. Defense doesn't actually matter all that much for these guys. The aircraft are too slow and too vulnerable. If they get jumped without supporting fighters, it ends badly. Meanwhile, more pilots who are already at 70 or approximately, I resize some of the smaller Kate squadrons to 27. That's our rule, is use doctoral sizes, and then I train them in ASW patrol. So you can see these guys are already pretty well trained pilots. Ground bombing is a skill I don't spend a lot of time training, but a lot of the Betty and Nell pilots already came that way. So I'm training them in ASW, and I sort them into cohorts based on their experience. Find they train faster. It's more efficient if you have all the 55s and 56s. You can see there's 149 in here, but he's the squadron leader together, and the 50. Basically, you dump them to your reserve, sort by the skill, and then pull them into your units lowest to highest to get cohort that's all at about a similar level of training. For the Army pilots, Army pilot training is simpler. It's for the pilots, the fighter pilots, it's identical to the Navy pilot training. You don't have the float planes. You're just using your NATE squadrons, the ones that don't upgrade to an aircraft you have at the moment. You generally need uh, nearly as many squadrons training pilots as your frontline squadrons. It depends on your loss rate, but that's the way you start off. And you can see they're training. These guys are training in naval attack at 1,000, and there's only 15 of them. And the reason is I've already pulled out the ones I want, um, the ones that have already reached 70, and now I'm just trying to tune up the last group. And each time they get to 70, I send them to the reserve pool. Low naval is also a valuable skill for the Army pilots because the Oscar 2Bs can carry bombs under their wings, and they're not a bad, though they're fragile. Um, they're fast and they have a little bit of armor and they can carry bombs. So it's not a bad impromptu naval attack aircraft. And when you get your Nick, um, the Nick's mate rate destroyer killers, but you need low naval to do that well. You can strafe with the Knicks too, um, but both skills work. And I always train strafe because it gets your defense up. On the bombers, Army bombers, you've got lots of IDA units, and you can start off training airfield attack until they get to about 60, and then I typically flip to ASW patrol, or start training ASW patrol and then switch to airfield attack, and then um, eh, you're going to need a lot of ASW trained pilots, and they need to be trained generally to 70. And as they get to 70, again, I pull them out, drop them into the reserve, and then put them in specialized squadrons. So here's a group of Army pilots that are all trained to 70 ASW, and now they're training in ground bombardment. So they're dual use. You can also eventually train some of them in low naval. Um, though, again, most of your bombers are too fragile to use this way. If the enemy has any significant AA, you're going to need a lot of ASW. Once the Americans get working torpedoes, suppressing their submarines is a key task. The only other thing, of course, is I mean, your recon pilots typically train uh, in recon until they're 60, skill 60, and then switch them over to naval search. And then once their naval search is up to 60, put them in the reserve. And float planes, I train those that aren't training fighter pilots. I train to 60 naval search. Let's see if I can find some here. I think these ALFs. Uh, say train them to naval search 60 and then switch them over to ASW. Uh, Seems to work. Remember, you can train your pilots um, on your CSs and your carriers when they're not at sea. Uh, just be careful to keep watching your aircraft, uh, checking the planes to make sure their fatigue levels are low. These fighters are not training currently, but the Kates are. You can see they're training in ASW, and you want to make sure that their fatigue levels don't get too high on those aircraft, because then when you need those carriers, um, your uh, your aircraft are not ready to fly. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. And again, we've got in the coming days, we'll have the attack on Madras and the maneuvering around Kolkata, the continued fighting in China, the wrapping up of our oil campaign in the DEI, the Dutch East Indies, and the preparation for enemy counterattacks. Again, probably in the Gilberts, potentially in the Solomons, likely in New Caledonia, the Aleutians, and maybe elsewhere. Looking forward to our next chance to talk.